Have you ever wondered how to get to bestseller status on Amazon? If you have, you're not alone. My name is Kim Vermaak. I am the author of the book series, The Chronicles of Nadine, and welcome to Author Chats. Today with us, we have got Dr. Emmy Estacio. Is that the correct way to pronounce her surname?
Yes, perfect.
She is a psychologist and she wrote an absolutely fabulous book called The Imposter Syndrome Remedy. And today she's going to chat to us about how to get to bestseller status on Amazon, because she's been there, done that, and she trains a lot of different authors on how to do the same. So welcome, Esty. Welcome to Author Chats.
Thank you very much for having me, Kim. So good to be here.
It's a great pleasure. I'm going to jump straight into this because what I like about the author chats is that we try and keep it short and sweet, because a lot of authors are writing part-time and so they want to just get to the meat of it straight away. So I'm going to run into our questions quickly. Why do you need to get to bestseller status on Amazon? What is the importance of that?
Well, it's for credibility, really. And when it comes to getting to #1 bestseller status on Amazon, you have increased visibility on the platform. You get that orange bestseller badge. So when people search for a particular book, there might be other books in your genre that might come up on the search page. But when you have that orange bestseller badge, it just adds that more gravitas, and it attracts readers to check out your book. Also, if you are a bestseller on Amazon, your book appears on the bestseller list. So, that increases the visibility of your book, and audience, new readers might discover you. They might not even know about you. They just so happen that they found you on the bestseller list. So it really does add visibility to your book. Not to mention that, you'll feel so proud. It has that sense of like, wow, I made it to, it's that sense of pride that really makes getting to bestseller status worthwhile.
That's fantastic. I'm looking really forward to getting to bestseller status. But I have to ask you, once you're on there, a lot of authors in their marketing, they say, I am an Amazon bestseller, or I'm a whatever bestseller, New York Times bestseller. But does that bestseller status remain on Amazon, or is there a time period? Does it fall away?
Yeah, well, it does. It does. It actually gets updated every hour. So you actually do need to keep up the sales to maintain that bestseller status on Amazon. So actually, even with the New York Times best-selling authors, they would be on the bestseller list for a couple of weeks if they don't maintain that momentum. So in the same way, for Amazon books, you need to have that consistent sales to stay on that bestseller list.
So you're basically saying that we've got to be super glued to our computer screen so we can nab that badge super fast before it disappears again.
Not necessarily. Well, this is the thing that I teach my students. There are some self-publishing gurus that will tell you, rally all your family and friends, ask them to download your book on a very specific time, on a very specific day, and it'll get you to #1. For my students, what I teach them is something that is long-term and something that is more on autopilot. So when you actually put your book out there, okay, you'll have a mega launch week. I always tell my students, launch week is where we put all of our efforts in and really make sure that we trigger the algorithm. But when you trigger the Amazon algorithm, it actually is quite easy to stay on the Amazon bestseller list, because Amazon will keep promoting your list of Amazon to sell books that do well on their market. So, for example, one of my students, Louise Armstrong, it's been we are now September. So she launched her book in May, June, July, August, September, 4 months in. She's still on the bestseller list. She's #1 or #2 since she launched her book. And that's because she managed to trigger the Amazon algorithm, that even after her launch week, her books continue to sell on autopilot because Amazon is selling it for her.
That's fantastic news, because I'm launching my next book in November. So I need all of these tips. Okay, so what are the first things that you've got to do before you actually launch? Is there like a checklist or something like that that people need to use?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So you are inside my community, Self-Publishing Made Simple, on Facebook. Inside our community, there's a free starter kit that you can download, which will show all of the steps from blank page to launch. But after you finish writing your book, that's when you put your publishing mode on, right? You know, that's when you start preparing for publication and so on. And I think that the step that a lot of authors miss is keyword research. And for my students, keyword research is something we do in week one. Before they even start writing their books, we do the keyword research, we do the market research. So we know exactly what the market demands. We know exactly what the readers are looking for. So we can write a book that will serve our audience well. And when you do your keyword research, you can also identify the search terms that people are putting on Amazon. So you can optimize your book's details, your title, subtitle, series title, if you have one, and your book description. So you can, what I would say, optimize your page to make sure that readers who are looking for a book like yours will find it. That you have that advantage of knowing what people are putting on the search bar, so when they type in those keywords, your book will turn up. So the very first thing, when it comes to launching a book, is you really need to do your keyword research and market research. In fact, it's not even before you launch a book. I tell my students, before you write your book, you need to do your keyword research and market research, because you have that intention to sell a book. Yes, sure, you can write a book, be creative. That's absolutely amazing. But if you want to sell your book and get your book to bestseller status, and for my students, 100% of my students get to number one bestseller on Amazon, the very first thing that we do is do keyword and market research, because our intention is to write a fantastic book that sells and that readers will find on Amazon. So that's the first thing, really important.
Okay, but now if you've already written the book and you're coming onto this interview and then you think, oh my word, how do I get this keyword research thing to work for me, considering that I've already written it? What do they do then?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. It's not the end of the world. You basically just need to tweak your metadata. You'll have to refine the title, the subtitle, your book description, and also the keywords that you put in at the back end on KDP. So even if you've already written your book, and you find these high traffic keywords from your research, you can still include them in your title, subtitle, series title, or book description, just to improve the visibility of your book when people actually search for a book like yours on Amazon.
Excellent, thank you. So now the next question is, when I launched my book, I saw that Amazon asked me for 2 categories to list the book in. But actually, you can list your book in a lot more categories, and a lot of authors don't know that. Explain a little bit about the expanded listing and how that works and how people can access it.
Oh, sure. Well, this is something that I teach inside the community, the Self-Publishing Made Simple community on Facebook. Most authors, they will just go for the 2 categories, because when you go to KDP, you will see that you only have an option to put in 2 categories, right? But the truth is, you can add your book in up to 10 categories on Kindle, and also 10 categories on paperback version. So, and on top of that, you can also list your book in the other categories in the other marketplaces. So you can have specific categories in .com, specific categories in .co.uk, in Australia, Germany, South Africa, wherever you are. So there are different categories, and all you have to do really is to get in touch with KDP support and ask them to list you in those 10 categories that you've chosen. And it's really important that you're able to do your category research, and this is something that I teach my students as well, is when choosing the 10 categories on Amazon, you need to be able to spread, you need to be able to strategize. So identify 2 or 3 categories that are highly popular. You know that there's a lot of traffic on that particular category, that even if you don't make it to number 1, you know that people are going through those categories because they're very popular. It's competitive, but it's good to be there. So identify two or three of those, and you can also identify two or three that are less popular, less competitive categories that it is really easy to compete and get to number one bestseller. I think the word that some people are using are obscure, that you go to the sub categories on Amazon, that it is so niched that there are only a handful of books in those categories. So you can identify two or three of those and dominate those particular sub categories, and that's how you can easily get your number one bestseller badge, especially if you have a launch strategy that works. There are some I know that there are some authors who will just, the easiest way to get to number one bestseller is to put them in these obscure categories, and they think that's the end of it. It's not. That's only one pillar, if you like. There are other things that you need to do, but certainly it does help when you have popular categories, when you have less popular categories, and what I call the evergreen categories, categories where there is still a bit of traffic, but not too competitive. So it's sort of like a medium place, if you like. So you need to be able to strategize and do your category research accordingly, so you can spread your book, distribute your book in all these 10 categories that you've chosen. You have popular categories, you have less popular categories, the obscure ones to get to number one, and the evergreen one where there is still traffic, but it's not all of the books on the front page are New York Times bestseller, when it's quite difficult to compete with Oprah and Obama and the Dalai Lama and so on. So do your category research, position your books well, and that's a really great way to promote your books and be strategic with your launch on Amazon.
Excellent. I think that we'll have to have a completely separate video on Author Chats just about keywords, because it sounds quite complex. But what I like to say to people is that when you're going down into your local shopping center and you maybe go down the vegetable aisle, because you're looking for vegetables, but then they put the peeler like hanging next to the vegetables, and you're like, oh, yes, I actually a vegetable peeler. I explain to people that way. That's why it's really important to be across the categories, because you can actually have someone that will find your book and love it, but they weren't specifically looking for your book at that time. Okay, so next, after we have listed, what do we do then?
Right. So another thing that I've noticed, a mistake, a big mistake that new authors make is that they launch their books and then they cross their fingers and hope for the best. Or the more enthusiastic ones would publish their books, launch their books, and then start running around asking family and friends to help them out, support their books. And I go, you've done it too late, dear. No, you should have asked for help 6 weeks ago. So this is what I help my students with. We actually do have a sequence that they will have to take step by step, all of the steps that they need to take before they launch their books. And one of the things that I tell them to do is organize their launch team. And we organize our launch team 6 weeks before launching the book. And what the launch team does is they are essentially advanced readers who will read your book in advance, let you know what they think about your book. But at the same time, your launch team will be the ones who will download your book on Amazon when you publish it and leave reviews before the launch, if that makes sense. So you essentially publish your book, your advanced readers will download the book on Amazon for free, and then you leave the review, and then you will have an official launch date for the public. And when that date comes, you already have like dozens of amazing reviews on your page. It is easier to sell your book when there is social proof. So that's why it's really important that you organize your launch team way in advance. It's not an afterthought that, hey, my book is published now, maybe I should ask for help. You should ask for help 6 weeks before you launch, and engage with your advanced readers, engage with your launch team involve them in the process. So when you actually publish and launch, they feel as if they are part of the process. And when you get to number one bestseller, they will celebrate with you. And it's such more, it's such a joyous thing to share, to be able to share that with people who supported you through the process.
So are you saying that, okay, let's use figures that I can understand. So my book is launching on the 3rd of November. That's the date that's listed on Amazon for the pre-launch. So would I upload a complete manuscript 6 weeks beforehand, and then people will download it from there?
No.
Or how do they gain access
How
to?
does it work? Right. So what I tell my students is, first of all, I don't know if you are already uploaded your book on pre-order and so on. I discourage my students from doing that, especially if you are a newbie self-published author. If you have an existing following, if you already have an existing audience, that's absolutely fine. But if you have zero followers and you're just starting out, I discourage my students from going through the pre-sale route, because that absolutely messes up your chances of triggering the Amazon algorithm. Because what Amazon would like is to have consistent sales every day, from the day that you publish until forever, essentially. And when you do pre-sales, you get the spike. You get a spike of sales when you officially launch the book, and then it dwindles. So instead of having an upward momentum from the day you publish until forever, what happens with the pre-sale is that you get an initial spike, and then the sales dwindle, which is actually reverse. So that's why I discourage my students from doing pre-sales, unless they already have an existing audience, and the audience is just already buzzing, and they really just want to buy the book now. Now, when it comes to your question, like, how does that work? Do I upload it? What I tell my students is, the advanced team can get a PDF copy of your book. Just send them an email six weeks beforehand, so they can actually read your book in advance, even before you publish your book. That way they can give you feedback. They can let you know if there are plot holes. Or for my students are mostly nonfiction writers, business experts, life coaches, spiritual healers who write books to serve their audience, and to share knowledge and so on. They give the book as a PDF version by email 6 weeks beforehand. They give feedback, and then by the time they are ready to publish, they publish their book. Their advanced readers can download it again on Amazon, but this time, because they've already read it, they can easily leave a review. They already know what the book is about. They can leave a review. So by the time you launch your book, then you'll have enough reviews for the wider public to see that your book is worth reading, and that there's enough social proof in it to encourage them to purchase the book.
Excellent. In another video, we're actually going to be working on how people can gain access to your book ahead of time. So definitely hit the subscribe button afterwards and stay posted, because we've got something quite exciting lined up. Naomi, I need to ask you a specific question about your book. You wrote the book, The Imposter Syndrome Remedy. And just firstly, before I ask the question, explain to people what is the imposter syndrome, that they understand my question in context.
Sure. Well, I'm a chartered psychologist, so this is something that I understand, from a professional standpoint. But imposter syndrome is this persistent feeling of self-doubt, incompetence, and inadequacy, despite the fact, despite evidence that shows otherwise. So you might be an expert in your field, you might be highly qualified to offer advice and guidance and so on. And actually, even for writers, you might be an excellent writer, but you have this persistent feeling that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy, and that people are going to find out that you're fooling everyone, that you're just a fraud. So yeah, this is something that is quite common in creative people. And in fact, actually, not just the creatives, 70% of us will experience imposter syndrome at some point in our working life. So it's really not uncommon. And And even if we achieve success, even if we receive praise for our work, compliments, you still feel as if you don't deserve it. It's as if you feel that people are just being nice to you, or people are lying to you, when they give you good feedback for your work, or they give you all these compliments. So it's that inability to internalize success. It's this denial of competence, this inability to embrace that you are good at what you do, and you're feeling guilty that you're doing what you're doing because you don't feel as if you're not you don't feel as if you're good enough, or that people are going to find out sooner or later that you're a fraud. You're on mute, Kim.
Sorry, I sometimes mute because the kids are making noise in the background. I don't want to interfere with the interview.
It's all right.
So the question that I have in context to that, sometimes people who don't feel that they are deserving of a positive outcome, they don't take action. So someone might say to you, oh, like if you were a singer, and this is a terrible analogy because there are some really bad auditions on Pop Idols, but but you have some people who actually just don't know what they're doing, and then they go and audition on Pop Idols and they humiliate themselves in front of the whole world. But then you get some people who will be singing in the shower and everyone would say like, wow, you actually are so incredibly good. But they don't go to the audition, they don't take the steps, they don't take any action. So as an author, if there are certain steps that you need to take, can imposter syndrome be something that will stop you from taking those steps? And how do you actually overcome that feeling like, oh, I can't take the next step?
Sure. Well, what I've noticed with authors is that they have this fear of judgment. They have this fear that people are going to make fun of them or criticize them, which is actually, yeah, as an author, this is bound to happen at some point. We will all have our critics. You cannot please everyone. So as an author, you need to be prepared to be criticized. There is always that risk that people are not going to like your work. And if you are scared that that would happen to you, all you have to think about is, unless you actually do it, you'll never find out the answer whether your work is good enough or not. So it's for in my book, what I ask my readers to do when they experience imposter syndrome is, first of all, they need to be aware of the messages that they feed themselves. We call this the inner critic messages inside my book. And for many self-help gurus, they might encourage you to crush it or to ignore it, or just don't, just have a fight with it. Don't encourage, these thoughts. But what I would say is, inside my book, I would tell you, okay, you don't need to have a fight with your inner critic. You don't need to have a battle with your inner critic. Because whether you like it or not, the inner critic is still a message inside your head. And if you have a fight with it, you're essentially having a fight with yourself. So what I encourage my readers to do, and actually my students to do as well, is to first of all identify where these messages are coming from, identify what these messages are, then give it the TLC treatment. And when I talk about TLC, we're not talking about tender loving care here. It is an acronym that I developed that will ask you to ask 3 questions, all right? Identify the message first, and then ask, is it true? Is it logical? Is it constructive? And when you answer those questions, you really need to make sure that your answers are based on evidence. So for example, if you're telling yourself, if you're writing, for example, a book on real estate, like how to save money on property or something like that, because that's your specialist area, and you're telling yourself, I'm not qualified to do this. You ask the first question, is it true? Is it true that you're not qualified to do this? And if you find that you've actually sold 100 properties already, and you've been a finance advisor for so long, and da even just with that first question, is it true? Most of the time, that's that's enough to convince you that your inner critic message is actually giving you lies. So as the first question, is it true? The second question is it logical? So there, I do have authors who would say something like, I'm not really a writer. I might be good at what I do, but I'm not really a writer. As the second question, is it logical? Just because you don't identify yourself as a writer, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a fraud. It just means that you're not good at writing. So that leads to the third question, is it constructive? If you are not good at writing, how can you fix that? How can you, instead of making it a destructive thing for you, how can you make it constructive? So that's actually what separates my advice from other self-help gurus. I don't want you to bury your head in the sand. I don't want you to be in denial that if you do have imperfections, if your self-doubt is actually coming from a place where you are actually putting yourself in a vulnerable position because you have limitations, instead of that stopping you from doing what you have to do, use that as a way to improve what you can do, to show that there are things, there are ways to work around that. So that's actually the C part. Ask, is it constructive? Because if it is not, then you can find ways to fix it. So for example, in my case, English is not my first language. So I could say something like, okay, I might be good in psychology, I might be able to write, but English is not my first language, so maybe I shouldn't write a book. I mean, imagine if I stayed with that, then I wouldn't have written my books that are, that's helping so many people, overcome their fear and their self-doubt. And my books are actually changing the habits of people who might be stuck in a rut for so long. So for me, English is not my first language. How do I make it constructive? I give it to a native speaker, to edit it. I give it to someone, read it, and let me know if you can spot any grammatical errors, or, you know what I mean? So if you do have limitations, I do have students who are dyslexic, for example. Oh, I'm just not good with words. But you are good with your topic, right? It's like, yeah, I know my stuff. Okay, dictate, narrate your knowledge, have someone transcribe it for you, have it edited. So you identify your limitations, but don't let that stop you from sharing what you have to share with the world. So the TLC questioning sequence is something that I use with my students and with my one-to-one clients as well for my psychology practice. But I suppose the easiest way for me to help my students with their imposter syndrome is called the flashlight technique. Now, the flashlight technique is another technique that would remedy imposter syndrome, and it encourages you to imagine that you are holding a flashlight, right? So when you are holding a flashlight, it could only flash the light at one spot at a time. So if you are flashing the light onto yourself, and if you are feeling doubtful, if you are feeling that you're not good enough, that you're not expert enough, and so on, that's the only thing that you will see. And that's what other people will see as well. So what I encourage my students to do is, instead of flashing the light onto themselves, they need to flash the light out. And when you flash the light out, you will see those people who you will serve by writing your book. So for example, if you are a parenting expert and you are helping parents to develop parenting skills, so they can have a harmonious family life, in their home, you can see that you can serve these people. They need your help. It's crazy in their homes. So even if you're feeling doubtful about yourself, it doesn't really matter if you know that what you have can serve and help all of those other people. Then your self-doubt will melt away, and I bet you that you're gonna write that book with the intention to serve those people. Doesn't matter how you feel about yourself. What matters is what you have can actually help other people.
That's a really good technique. And I must say, it's something that I've used in my second book, because although I'm a novelist, so I write stories. I've got a passion for young people and for people who had traumas in their lives. And what I find is that sometimes I buy books, self-help books, and then I don't finish them. To my shame.
Right, happens.
Books at the top shelf, self-help books. But I do find that when I read a novel, I just like tear through it. And many years ago, I had one or two friends that actually had terminations of pregnancies, and they struggled through it. The healing part was just dreadful, and they were too ashamed to speak to anyone about it. And you know, I remember the one girl, I found her lying on the bathroom floor, like just crying her eyes out, and I had to rock her. And I just thought, is there any way to actually help some of these people through the trauma when they are too ashamed to tell anyone what's happened? And so my book, The Chronicles of Nadine, the second book, The Fire Within the Storm, actually is a story, but underlying there is someone that's had to face that decision of termination of pregnancy. And there's a lot of healing that comes at the end of the book. So I've been writing on this really rigorous schedule, and I just got to a place where I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. And then that just reminded me what it was that I was trying to achieve. I wanted to have conversation topics for people that had faced that trauma without feeling like people were judging them, without going to a bookstore and saying, oh, I'm picking up this book on how to get over a termination of pregnancy. And then everyone's like, did you have a termination of pregnancy? So that particular technique really helped me in terms of finishing it. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I so appreciate it. I want you to just tell people, where can they find your books? And obviously you love Amazon, so I think the answer would be obvious. But besides that, what is next for you in terms of your writing?
Yes, well, in terms of where to find my book, yes, you can find it on Amazon.com. So you have it on print, Kindle, and audiobook versions. You just need to type in Imposter Syndrome Remedy and you will find my book there. My other books are, my first book is called Change Your Life for Good, and the third book is called Fear is Not My Enemy. So you have those books if you want to buy it as a series. In terms of what's happening next, I'm actually launching a book soon, but it's a health psychology textbook. It's the 6th edition already, for that health psychology text. So it's gonna come out anytime soon. That one is not self-published though. That's published with traditionally published, but it's coming out very soon.
Excellent. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time. For everyone, I am going to put at the bottom the link for her book. And I'll also put down a link for her group that you can be part of the Self-Publishing Made Simple community. It's a lovely place to network, to meet other people. And she posts every Tuesday. She posts a video, Ask Me Anything, and I've learned a lot from that. So thank you very much for your generosity for that. So yeah, that's all for today for Author Chats. I look forward to seeing everyone the following week, Wednesday, when the next person is going to be featured. Thanks so much for joining us. Goodbye for now.
Bye.